Hi, my name is Gerhard Schwantner, and welcome to the Sales Up Shop. Today we have the pleasure of continuing our conversation in part two with Michael Bonner, President and CEO of Pipeline Manager. Welcome, Michael. Let's jump right in. How can we define and maintain an effective sales process?
Well, now you're really talking about my comfort zone, because this is where I began 10 years ago, is with that exact question. How do you take what people have known was a good idea, have really wanted to have as something that is part of their daily life? How do you do that so that it's something they don't forget, forget over time, forget because there's resistance? And all you have to do, I realized, is you have to make it easier for people to follow a sales process than to do anything else. And if you can come up with something that says, all right, I don't have to retype this, I don't have to remember this, I don't have to be nagged about it, it's just there. If you can do that, then you've got something where sales process is not just this thing that people have to deal with, but it's actually helping them move forward. Because really, at its best, the sales process, the whole idea of it, is to help a salesperson to be more successful. And so how tough is it for people to say, gee, I'd rather not be successful, I'd rather work my own way. Instead, what you need to do is take that sales process and make it into something that, first of all, is incredibly easy for people to use. And so that's what we've got on the pipeline, is something that each opportunity, you've got a chance to select one or from any number of different sales processes, because in a perfect world, you've got managers who are saying, you know what, it's not good enough to have a sales process. When we talk to a multi-billion-dollar Fortune 100, that's going to be a very different sale than the SMB that we deal with day in and day out. We better be ready for that. So you got to make sure that you're making people successful in different scenarios, and then you've got to make it possible for people to understand what that sales process is. If you just put in a minimal note that says do demo, well, that's not very helpful. It might say, yeah, we have to do a demo and do 2 calls in this stage. That's kind of starting the process, but you need to be specific so that people know what is the outcome, what's the expected outcome. How do I know I did well? How do I know I screwed up? So if you can have something that speaks to not just here's what you need to do, but really that's only 10% of any activity. The other 90% is what happened as a result. Did you move things forward? Can you set things up in a way so that each one of the actions of that sales process says the customer told us this, therefore this is still a good investment for us? Then you've got something that is helping you to manage your business. It's helping to guide people to get more successful over time. And if you keep it really flexible so that the customer can say, you know what, we're not going to do that step. We do need to make adjustments because we've got 3 people on vacation that week. You know, it's not rigid, it's flexible, it's something that also the salesperson can add to. Because hopefully when you've got the star salespeople, they need the flexibility to say, you know what, I think there's another step that's missing, let me try this for a while. And if that works, then you need to be able to take whatever works and get that into that sales process that's in front of people all the time, so that the entire team in that team sport is learning from what is getting traction out there.
Michael, sometimes I get the impression when I talk to VPs of sales that their sales process is like a vehicle, like a car that has 4 wheels that continually get out of alignment, and sometimes they completely fall off.
Well, but there could be many reasons for that. I mean, the first thing that you have to challenge is the sales process that you created 2 years ago, 5 years ago. You paid all that money to that consultant. Well, it may have been a great process to begin with, but so much has changed since you put that process in place. What is it that keeps that thing vital? What is it that keeps it alive and responsive to what the customer is telling you? Because the salesperson is hearing what the customer is saying, and if the customer is saying, boy, is this not working, you better have a sales process that adapts really quickly, or if you've got the sales process in everybody's hands, you're going to have a bunch of people making the same mistake. So it's got to be flexible and responsive.
So, Michael, let's put ourselves in the role of the sales manager. You look at your salespeople and see how accurately they follow the sales process, and you realize about 20% are doing a pretty good job, but 80% are hit or miss. So, what do you do as a sales manager to bring up those 80% to a higher level of performance with the sales process?
Let's make sure we're clear here. Because, first of all, you're saying 20% are really good with the sales process. If there's total alignment between being really good with the sales process and being really successful, well, that's a pretty easy sell for the rest of the team. We've heard, just to put it in another term, we've heard about lots of people who are really good with CRM, and they're great with Salesforce, and they can do all kinds of stuff, and it turns out they're getting the worst numbers in the organization because they're spending so much time doing the wrong stuff. So is that 20% really good? If they're really good, then the question is, how is it you translate that into the rest of the team, and how do you do it so that it is something that really helps people? Now, you actually were kind enough to give me a metric a little while ago that pointed to a Harvard Business Review article that said that if you change your coaching behaviors to stop focusing on your top 20%, and stop focusing on the bottom 20%, because according to the research that was in that article, those guys probably, you're wasting your time. They're just not going to probably make it. But if you focused on that middle 60%, and you took that sales process and said, look, this is how people are doing it, and this is how we're going to do it step by step. We're going to make it easy for you to do this so that you don't even have to retype it into your CRM. It's just this kind of book of success that's in front of you every time you open up your pipeline. Then you've got a place to begin the conversation, but also don't forget, what is it that you've got for an expected outcome? Because if you expect the customer to do X and they keep doing Y and they do it 5 times, 10 times, you probably have something you need to change in that sales process. So good, go ahead, keep that process, again, vital. You can even have multiple processes where you're A/B testing, just like Google does for marketing. What if you had a process that said, okay, we're going to the Fortune 100s this way for this team and this way for that team, and see where the success is? That's going to help you to keep coming back to that process and understanding what's working, what isn't working, and keep coming back to the 20% and go, wait a minute, we learned something, we want you guys to do this too.
Michael, how do you get customers on board to help you with refining your sales process?
Well, hopefully you've got a few customers out there who love you to death and are happy to see you show up, and you sit down with them and go, why did you buy from us? What are the things that we did right? What could we have done better? So that then you can start evolving a process based on what's successful. And if you can partner with an existing customer to share their stories, share things that hopefully you've gotten a good enough relationship that they can tell you where you're not very good, then you've got a place to begin that whole conversation and evolve that process, so that then when you're dealing with your prospective customers, you can see where the little touchy points are that were kind of iffy, and you can say, do you mind if we try this? Do we mind if I try that? And start partnering with them. And at that point, it's also not really a downside, because honesty isn't such a bad thing in a sales process. And asking people to be your expert is playing to their ego. So it's really a kind of a no-lose situation when you ask for somebody's advice.
Michael, I think it's a really great idea to put an expiration date on a sales process. Is there a metric that you can share that can help us predict with reasonable clarity how effective we are with the sales process?
Well, let's go back to what we were talking about earlier. What is it that you want real visibility on? I mean, if you want to just plain talk about, are you getting better sales? That's a pretty basic metric. But what is it that's getting you there? And are you getting sales that make a really happy customer, or are you kind of dragging customers against their will? What is it that really is the stuff that you want to build your business on? And start figuring out from there. As you put together your sales process, now you've got an opportunity to capture different types of data points and not just plan to get them, but if the sales process is right, have a place where you're continually getting the feedback on those. Again, qualitative Don't think in terms so much of a nice little bar chart or a little meter that you can look at. Metrics in the story, I think, have a much better chance of turning into actionable pieces on a sales process when you think about them in full context. And especially if you've got visibility where marketing and sales are working hand in hand in a way that frequently they don't do, because then marketing and sales can be weighing in on the sales process. Marketing can say, wait a minute, I could save you some trouble here. Sales is going, wait a minute, I don't really need you to do that. They've got a much better dialogue. But again, it's around the qualitative issues, and you're going into moving the science of selling into its proper niche and hopefully opening up the art of selling to where it should be. Because so as sales evolves, it seems to me marketing is doing the science of selling better and better all the time and kind of taking that burden off of sales, but sales still needs to know about the science of selling, but not drive it. So then if you can keep marketing doing much more of the science side and focus on the coaches and the teams working better on the art side, then you can start figuring out what are those things that might not look like rows and columns in Excel spreadsheets, but instead really help you to hear customers in a way that you haven't before. Those are the sorts of things that I think are the metrics.
Michael, thank you. I agree with you that sales and marketing is art and science, and you need to run sales on a scientific foundation today. And I think to me, it's all about the mindset, the skill set, and also the tool set. Our time is up. We are going to continue in part 3, where we talk more about pipeline management.